There is a place far beneath the surface of the ocean where the world above no longer reaches. You don't need to imagine the journey here. You are already inside. The space around you feels enclosed in a gentle way, not tight, not heavy, just quietly held. There is a steady presence in the air, a soft, constant sound that never changes, as if it has always been here and always will be. Light moves differently this far below. It doesn't shine or flicker. It simply rests, filtered softly through layers of water, calm and unhurried. Nothing asks for your attention. Nothing needs to be followed. You can let the words pass by or settle into them in whatever way feels easiest. If this feels like a place where your mind can finally slow down, then you already belong here. Subscribing simply makes it easier to return whenever you need rest. This place has known silence for a very long time. Somewhere nearby, a man named Thomas sits quietly, not waiting for anything, not thinking of anywhere else. He has spent many calm hours here over the years, listening to the same steady sound, watching the same gentle light, letting the world above remain far away. What he remembers most is not events, but the feeling of being here. How the stillness slowly gathers around you. How the mind loosens its grip without being asked to. If your thoughts wander for a moment, that's perfectly natural in a place like this. The ocean holds everything at a steady distance, and down here, beneath it all, there is nothing you need to carry. Just the quiet remaining exactly as it is. The submarine sits level on a bed of fine sediment, its hull dark against darker water. Around it, the ocean extends in every direction without variation, without landmarks, without change. There is no up or down in any meaningful sense. Only the gentle, constant pressure of water that has found its equilibrium and has no reason to disturb it. Inside, the walls curve inward with the patient logic of engineered things, surfaces smooth and cool to the touch. A single light burns low near the far end of the chamber, its glow amber and diffused, spreading just far enough to suggest the room's dimensions without revealing all of them at once. The illumination seems to come from nowhere specific, as though the metal itself were remembering warmth rather than producing it. The air inside carries a particular quality, not stale but contained, recycled without hurry. There is the faint metallic taint of old steel, the ghost of oil and salt, traces of something lived in but not neglected. Temperature hovers in that space between cool and neutral, the kind that asks nothing of the body, neither warming nor chilling. Thomas wears a sweater the color of charcoal, sleeves pushed to his elbows, fabric soft from years of use. His hands rest open on his knees, palms upward as though waiting to catch something, though nothing here is falling. His face holds the particular weariness of someone who has stopped fighting time. Not young, not old, somewhere in the space where age becomes less about years and more about what one has chosen to carry. His eyes are grey, calm, directed at nothing in particular. The kind of gaze that watches without expecting, that rests on surfaces without needing to interpret them. Before arriving here, Thomas had spent the day moving through obligations that felt increasingly like theatre, conversations that required him to nod at correct intervals, decisions presented as urgent when they were merely habitual, the steady accumulation of small falseness, each one bearable alone, collectively exhausting. He had touched his coffee cup that morning the way he always did, fingertips testing the ceramic's warmth before lifting it. A small habit, unnecessary. But his hands seemed to need the confirmation before committing to the action. The coffee had been the right temperature. It always was. Yet still, he checked. There had been a meeting, then another. Faces across a table, voices discussing timelines and projections, everyone performing certainty with varying degrees of conviction. He had contributed when required, his responses accurate and appropriate and entirely automatic. Afterward, he could not remember a single specific sentence anyone had spoken, including himself. By afternoon, he had felt the familiar tightness beginning in his chest. Not pain, not anxiety in any clinical sense. Simply the body's quiet insistence that something needed to release, that continuation without pause was not the same as sustainability. So he had come here, to this vessel, to this depth, to this particular quality of silence that does not exist anywhere on the surface. The light near the far wall flickers once, so briefly it might be imagined, but the flicker is real. A momentary dimming, then restoration, the systems adjusting themselves to maintain equilibrium. Nothing alarming, nothing requiring attention. Just the vessel doing what it was built to do, sustaining itself in an environment that would otherwise collapse it without mercy. Thomas lifts one hand from his knee and lets it drift toward a small panel beside him. His fingers trace the row of switches there, not pressing, not activating, just touching. Learning their positions through repetition. The metal is cold under his skin, each toggle distinct in shape and placement. He knows them all by feel now, could locate any one of them in absolute darkness. The panel controls minor functions, interior lights, air circulation, the small heating element in the galley space, simple systems, domestic systems, the kind that make inhabitation possible rather than survival. He does not adjust anything. His hand simply moves across the switches like reading Braille, confirming their presence, then returns to his knee. Outside the hull, water presses with consistent force, millions of gallons arranged in layers, each one bearing the weight of those above, distributing pressure with mathematical evenness. The submarine's walls absorb this force without complaint. Metal and welds and rivets, all performing the task they were designed for, holding back the ocean, creating a pocket of air in a place where air has no business existing. Thomas has been here long enough that the pressure feels normal now. When he first descended, his ears had ached with the change. His chest had felt tight, convinced something was wrong, even when instruments confirmed everything was precisely as it should be. The body's old instincts, insisting that this depth meant danger, that lungs should be gasping, that survival required immediate ascent. But those instincts had quieted over time. The body learned. The ache faded. Now, the pressure feels like a presence rather than a threat, like being held contained but not confined, the way a well-fitted coat surrounds without restricting. He breathes slowly. In through the nose, out through slightly parted lips. The rhythm is his own, unforced. His chest expands and contracts with the steady patience of tide, of seasons, of things that move because movement is their nature, not because they have been commanded. The low hum continues, always continues. Thomas has stopped trying to locate its source. It seems to come from everywhere and nowhere, woven into the vessel's structure like thread through fabric. Background, foundation. The sound beneath all other sounds, so persistent it becomes less like noise and more like a form of silence with texture. On a small shelf, bolted to the wall, there is a photograph in a simple frame. The glass catches the amber light at an angle, obscuring the image partially, but Thomas does not need to see it clearly. He knows what it shows. A house with blue shutters. A front porch with 2 chairs. Morning light falling across wooden boards. No people in the frame, but their presence implied by the arrangement of things. A jacket draped over one chair's arm. A book left open on the porch rail, pages bent backward to hold a place. He had taken the photograph on a September morning 5 years ago, or perhaps 6. The exact number of years felt less important than the quality of light that day, the particular temperature of air, the way shadows fell long and soft across everything. Early autumn. The kind of morning where the world feels generous without effort. The house belonged to someone else now. He had signed papers, packed boxes, arranged for movers who handled everything with professional efficiency and no sentiment. The transaction had been clean, final, the kind of ending that leaves no room for negotiation or reversal. Yet here was the photograph, still present, still amber-lit in a submarine resting on the ocean floor. Thomas does not examine this contradiction. He simply allows it to exist. Some things are kept not because they make sense, but because releasing them would require a decision, and he is tired of making decisions that pretend to matter. The vessel shifts slightly. Not movement in any dramatic sense, just the kind of microscopic settling that happens when weight redistributes across a soft surface, the sediment beneath adjusting to the hull's pressure, finding a new configuration of balance. The shift is so subtle it registers more as a change in feeling than actual motion. The way standing on a dock sometimes produces the sensation of gentle rocking even when the dock itself is motionless. Thomas feels it. His body registers the adjustment and compensates without thought, weight shifting fractionally to maintain equilibrium. The body knows how to do this, has always known. The brain's involvement is optional, often counterproductive. He thinks about the meetings earlier, the faces arranged around the table, everyone performing engagement, everyone aware, on some level, that the performance was required regardless of actual investment. The strange exhaustion of pretending investment matters when everyone present knows it does not. Yet no one can afford to acknowledge this truth directly. There had been a woman across from him, younger, ambitious in the careful way of people who have learned that obvious ambition draws unwanted attention. She had presented a proposal. Her voice steady, her points organized, her confidence calibrated to suggest competence without arrogance. He had watched her hands while she spoke. They moved with precision, emphasizing certain words, drawing shapes in the air to illustrate concepts, rehearsed gestures, effective gestures, but gestures nonetheless. At one point, she had paused to take a drink of water, just a sip, quick and functional, but in that half-second, her expression had changed. The professional mask slipping just enough to reveal something underneath. Not doubt, exactly, more like weariness, the kind that comes from sustaining performance over extended periods. Then the mask had returned. She had continued. The proposal had been approved. Everyone had nodded agreement. The meeting had ended precisely on schedule. Thomas wonders if she had gone home afterward and felt what he felt. The peculiar emptiness of having participated fully in something that required participation but offered no nourishment. Going through motions that were simultaneously necessary and meaningless, like eating food that sustains the body while providing no pleasure. Or perhaps she had felt energized. Perhaps the approval had mattered to her in ways he could no longer access. Perhaps his own numbness was not universal but particular. A failing of his capacity for engagement rather than a feature of the situation itself. He does not know, cannot know. The distance between internal experiences is unbridgeable except through language, and language so often obscures more than it reveals. The photograph on the shelf holds its position. The house with blue shutters remains frozen in permanent mourning. September light that will never advance toward afternoon. A book that will never finish being read. Thomas remembers the weight of that book. Not this specific book, but books in general. The particular heft of paper bound together, the way pages felt between fingers, the resistance they offered when turned. Textures the body learned young and never forgot. Even now, decades later, his hands could identify a book in darkness by touch alone. The grain of the cover, the thickness of pages, the slight roughness of uncoated paper versus the slickness of photographs. Reading had been different then. Not an activity carved out of increasingly segmented time, but something that expanded to fill whatever space it was given. Hours could pass without awareness of their passing. The room would darken gradually, and he would notice only when his eyes began to strain, when the text became harder to resolve against the fading light. Now, reading felt like a task on a list. Something to be completed rather than inhabited. He would sit with a book, eyes tracking across lines, brain processing information, yet somehow never quite entering the world the words were meant to create. Observer rather than participant, consumer rather than inhabitant. This bothered him, though he could not articulate exactly why. Some loss he felt but could not name. Like realizing a familiar song no longer produced any emotional response. that the neurons which once fired in recognition and pleasure now processed the melody as mere information, functional but hollow. The low hum continues its steady presence. Thomas breathes with it, matching his rhythm to its constancy. In, out, in, out, in, out. The body finding synchronization with something external, something reliable, something that asks nothing in return for its consistency. Outside, the water maintains its pressure, constant, unwavering. The submarine does not fight this pressure so much as accommodate it, structured designed to distribute force evenly across its surface. No weak points, no vulnerable seams, each rivet placed with precision, each weld inspected and approved. The vessel does not resist the ocean. It simply exists within it, maintaining a boundary that allows air to remain distinct from water, inside separate from outside. Thomas understands this on a level deeper than thought. The need for boundaries, for maintained separation, not as defense, but as definition. A self cannot exist without edges, without some determination of what is self and what is not self. Yet those edges must be permeable enough to allow exchange, interaction, the necessary commerce between interior and exterior. Too rigid, and the self becomes a tomb. Too permeable, and it dissolves entirely. He has been learning this balance, not through intention, but through accumulated experience. The way one learns to ride a bicycle not by understanding physics, but by falling until the body discovers the precise angle of lean that maintains forward motion without collapse. There are days when the boundary feels too permeable, when other people's expectations, demands, and presences flow through him without resistance, leaving him feeling transparent, occupied but absent, going through motions that produce correct results, while some essential core retreats further inward, seeking refuge in depths those external forces cannot reach. Other days, the boundary holds too firmly. He becomes a wall, impenetrable, yes, but also isolated, cut off from the very exchange that makes existence feel textured rather than flat. Those are the days when words emerge from his mouth and he hears them from a distance, wondering who is speaking, why they are saying these particular things, whether anything being said connects to anything genuinely felt. The submarine offers a different equation. Here, the boundary is literal, steel and rivets and engineering, inside and outside perfectly defined. The pressure outside is real and measurable. The air inside is his to breathe, no ambiguity, no constant negotiation of where he ends and the world begins. It is restful, this clarity. This lack of demand for constant self-definition against forces that blur edges and insist on permeability beyond comfort. He shifts slightly, adjusting his position against the wall. The metal behind him holds his weight without comment, cool through the sweater, unyielding but not uncomfortable, simply present, simply performing its function of being wall, of maintaining the structure that creates this interior space. His eyes drift to another object on the shelf. A small stone, smooth and dark, basalt probably. Shaped by water, over time unmeasurable. Edges worn away until only essential form remained. He had found it on a beach once, or someone had given it to him. The origin was no longer clear, but the stone itself remained definite, real, a small weight that fit perfectly in the palm of his hand. Sometimes he would hold it, feel its coolness become warmth through contact with his skin, trace its contours with his thumb. Simple tactile engagement. The body in dialogue with an object that did not require words or interpretation. Just touch, just presence. The stone had traveled with him through several moves, packed in boxes with items deemed essential, not valuable in any monetary sense, not beautiful by conventional standards. Just a dark, smooth stone that somehow felt necessary. An anchor of a different sort. Proof that some things remain solid even when everything else seems to shift and dissolve. Time here moves differently. Not faster or slower, but with a different texture. Minutes and hours become less relevant. What matters is the state itself, the quality of being, alert but not tense, present but not effortful. The kind of awareness that can observe thought without becoming entangled in it, that can feel sensation without needing to act upon it. Thomas notices his breathing has deepened. Not through intention, but as natural consequence. The body settling into stillness, muscles releasing tension he had not realized he was holding, jaw unclenching, shoulders dropping fractionally. Small releases accumulating into a general softening. This is why he comes here, not to escape exactly. More to remember, to recall what it feels like when the body is allowed to simply be. When performance is not required, when the gap between who he is and who he presents to the world can narrow, close, disappear entirely for brief spans. The amber light continues its steady glow, unchanging, reliable, like the hum, like the pressure, like the sediment beneath the hole that has stopped shifting and found its accommodation with weight. He thinks about the woman from the meeting again. Wonders if she has a place like this, some refuge where the performance can be set down, where the careful calibration of voice and gesture and expression is not needed, where she can sit in stillness and let the mask dissolve without consequence. Or perhaps she does not need such a place. Perhaps the performance feels less like performance to her. Perhaps the distance he feels is not universal but personal. A particular weariness that belongs to him alone, product of choices made and unmade. Accumulations of small compromises that individually meant nothing but collectively created a life that feels adjacent to his actual living of it. He does not know, cannot know, and the not knowing is acceptable here. Questions do not demand answers in this space. They can exist as questions, suspended in the amber light, neither resolved nor dismissed. A small gauge on the wall shows internal pressure, numbers that mean something to those who understand their language. Thomas can read them, has learned their significance, but he does not check them often. The systems monitor themselves, alert if intervention is needed. His attention is optional, often unnecessary. This too is restful, being unnecessary. Having systems that function without requiring his participation. So much of the surface world insists on participation, demands attention, requires responses, emails waiting, messages accumulating. The endless scroll of content, all asking to be consumed, reacted to, shared, validated. Here, nothing asks. The submarine maintains itself. The ocean presses and the hull resists, and the balance holds. His presence changes nothing fundamental about these facts. He could leave tomorrow and the vessel would remain. The pressure would continue. The sediment would bear its weight precisely as before. There is something profoundly freeing in this irrelevance, not in a nihilistic sense, more in the recognition that the world is perfectly capable of continuing without his constant intervention, that rest is possible, that withdrawal does not equal abandonment. He has been learning to recognize the difference between necessary engagement and the illusion of necessity, between showing up because his presence matters and showing up because the machinery of obligation says he must. The photograph on the shelf, the house with blue shutters. He had loved that house once. The particular creak of its floorboards, the way afternoon light fell through the kitchen window, the tree in the front yard that dropped leaves in great golden drifts each October. But he had not loved it enough to stay. Or perhaps he had loved it exactly as much as possible, and that amount had proven insufficient when measured against other forces, practical forces, economic forces. The weight of a life that had arranged itself in ways that made staying more costly than leaving. The ending had been clean. Papers signed, keys handed over. No drama, no final looks backward. Just the simple mechanics of transition from one state to another, owned to not owned, present to absent, his to someone else's. Yet the photograph remained. Evidence that love, even insufficient love, leaves traces, that places imprint themselves on us in ways that survive their physical loss. Memory as a form of continued possession, though a ghostly one. Having without holding, knowing a thing existed without being able to touch it again. Thomas lifts his hand and lets it fall back to his knee. The gesture means nothing, accomplishes nothing. Just movement for its own sake. The body asserting its existence through minor animation. Proof of presence through small action. The vessel holds him, surrounds him. Maintains the pocket of air that allows his continued existence at this depth. He trusts this completely, not as act of faith, but as recognition of engineering. The submarine was built for this. Its entire purpose is maintaining exactly this boundary between inside and outside, air and water, life and the pressure that would extinguish it. He thinks about trust, how it requires maintenance, how even the most reliable systems need monitoring, adjustment, the occasional intervention to correct, drift, or compensate for wear. The submarine's systems run self-checks constantly. Compare expected values to actual values. make corrections before deviations become critical. Human trust operates differently, less systematic, more dependent on accumulated evidence. Each small confirmation building toward larger confidence, each betrayal eroding foundations in ways not easily repaired. He had trusted people, institutions, the basic reliability of certain structures. Some of that trust had been warranted, other parts had proven misplaced. The learning process involved pain, recalibration, the gradual refinement of what deserved trust and what merely demanded it. The submarine deserves his trust. Its track record is consistent. Its responses predictable. It does what it was designed to do without deviation or surprise. This is comforting. This predictability, this absence of hidden agendas or shifting motivations, metal and pressure and engineering following laws that do not change based on mood or circumstance. Time continues its patient movement. Seconds accumulating into minutes, minutes becoming hours. The divisions feel less important here. What matters is the continuity, the unbroken presence, the steady maintenance of state. His breathing has slowed further, deep and regular, the body finding its lowest sustainable rhythm. Not sleep, but the space adjacent to it, conscious but barely, aware without effort. The mind drifting like sediment in still water, each thought settling gently rather than churning. He allows this, does not fight the drift. Long experience has taught him that resistance only prolongs wakefulness. The body knows how to release into rest. The mind, when permitted, will follow, but permission is required. The explicit granting of allowance to stop holding, stop monitoring, stop maintaining vigilance against threats, both real and imagined. The amber light seems softer now, not dimmed mechanically, but perceived through eyelids that have begun to lower. The warm glow filtering through thin skin, creating a gentle illumination that requires no interpretation, just color, just warmth, just presence. The low hum continues, constant companion, steady heartbeat of metal and machinery. Thomas's own heartbeat slows to match it, or perhaps the hum adjusts to match him. The distinction seems unimportant. What matters is the synchronization, two rhythms finding harmony, internal and external becoming briefly indistinguishable. Outside, the ocean holds its depth. Inside, the air holds its composition. Between them, the whole holds its integrity. All systems functioning, all pressures balanced. The submarine exists in equilibrium, and Thomas exists within that equilibrium, held by forces that ask nothing except his continued breathing, which he does, in, out, simple mechanics. Ancient process, the body sustaining itself through cycles so fundamental they predate thought, predate language, predate everything except the basic biological imperative to continue. And in this continuation there is rest, not as achievement but as allowance, the permission to simply be here, now. Surrounded by amber light and steady pressure and the patient hum of systems maintaining themselves beneath the surface, below the world, away from demands and performances and the endless negotiation of boundaries. The stone on the shelf holds its darkness. The photograph holds its mourning. Thomas holds his breathing. And the submarine holds them all, suspended in depth that measures itself not in feet or meters, but in the quality of silence it creates. Profound silence, textured silence. The kind that does not empty the mind, but fills it with awareness of its own processes. Thoughts rising and falling like gentle waves, each one observed without attachment. Each one allowed to complete its arc without interference. This is the gift of depth, not escape from the surface, but distance from its urgency. Down here, nothing is urgent. Everything can wait. Everything does wait. The ocean has waited for millions of years. The submarine can wait for hours or days or weeks. And Thomas, held between them, can also wait, can let time move at its own pace, can stop trying to direct its flow or maximize its use or extract value from its passage. Just wait, just breathe, just be. The vessel settles more firmly into the sediment, an infinitesimal adjustment. Barely perceptible, but real nonetheless. Weight finding its most stable configuration. The hull and the seafloor reaching agreement about how to distribute force. A conversation conducted through pressure and response, without words, without consciousness, without anything except physics and patience. Thomas feels this settling in his own body. Muscles finding their lowest tension, spine aligning with gravity's pull, head finding balance on neck, finding balance on shoulders. Everything arranging itself according to laws that require no enforcement because they are laws, not suggestions. Gravity does what gravity does. The body responds as bodies must. And in this response, there is no effort, no decision, no performance, just the honest physics of weight and support. Bone and tissue and the floor beneath him all participating in the ancient arrangement that allows rest, that allows horizontal becoming possible, that allows the body to stop fighting its own weight and simply surrender to being held. The amber light continues. The hum persists. The pressure remains constant. All the elements that define this space maintaining their presence without variance, creating a container so stable that change becomes optional, growth becomes unnecessary. Nothing needs to develop or evolve or improve. Everything can simply persist in its current state, adequate and complete, exactly as it is. This is radical in a world that insists on progress, on development, on constant forward motion justified by narratives of improvement and achievement and the endless march towards some imagined better version of everything. Here, there is no better version. There is only this version, this moment, this breath, this particular configuration of light and sound and pressure. Not perfect, but whole. Not ideal, but sufficient. Not transcendent, but deeply, profoundly okay. Thomas has been seeking okay for longer than he can remember. Not happiness, which felt too ambitious, not contentment, which seemed like settling, just okay. The simple acknowledgement that this moment, exactly as it is enough, requires no modification, deserves no judgment, simply exists as valid experience worthy of being fully inhabited. And here, in this submarine, in this depth, in this amber light, okay reveals itself as not a compromise but a state of grace, the end of striving, the beginning of acceptance. The recognition that what is has always been enough, if only he could stop insisting it should be something else. His eyes close fully now, not as decision but as natural consequence. Eyelids too heavy to maintain their opening, the effort required exceeding the body's willingness to provide it, so they lower, gently, gradually, sealing out the amber light, creating darkness that holds no threat, just absence of illumination, just the body's oldest signal that rest has permission to deepen. Behind closed eyes, after images dance briefly, phantom lights tracing patterns across the inside of his lids, the brain processing residual signals, creating meaning where none exists. Gradually, these fade, the darkness becomes complete. The visual field empties, and with its emptying, attention shifts. No longer distributed across multiple sensory channels, it consolidates, narrows, focuses on what remains. The hum, the breathing, the gentle pressure of wall against back. Simple inputs, manageable inputs, the kind the body can process without engaging higher cognitive functions. Sensation without interpretation. Experience without narrative. This is where sleep begins, not in the dramatic shutdown of consciousness, but in its gradual simplification. The slow winnowing of attention until only the most fundamental processes remain. Heartbeat, breathing, the basic maintenance of biological systems that continue regardless of awareness. Thomas drifts toward this simplification, not rushing, not resisting, simply allowing the natural progression from alert to drowsy to that liminal space where the boundary between waking and sleeping becomes permeable. Thoughts becoming dreams, becoming thoughts, becoming dreams in cycles too quick to track. The submarine continues its faithful work. Systems monitoring, air recycling, pressure contained, hull maintaining integrity. All the complex orchestration of survival happening automatically, requiring no input from the man it shelters. He is cargo now. Precious cargo, perhaps, but cargo nonetheless. Carried by forces larger than himself, held by structures built to hold. And in this holding, there is profound safety, the kind a child feels when picked up by a trusted adult. Weight transferred. Responsibility released. The body learning it does not have to support itself in this moment. Something else is handling that task. Something capable, something reliable, trust deepening into surrender. Surrender deepening into rest. Rest deepening into something that resembles peace, if peace is defined not as the absence of conflict, but as the acceptance of whatever is. The ocean presses, the hull resists. The balance holds. And Thomas, held within that balance, breathing within that space allows the last tension to release, allows the final vigilance to relax, allows himself to stop monitoring for danger that is not present, threats that are not real, outcomes that do not require his constant attention. Just this, just now. Just breathing in a submarine on the ocean floor, surrounded by amber light and steady sound and the patient pressure of water that has waited, here long before his arrival and will remain long after his departure. Nothing needs to happen. Nothing needs to change. This moment, exactly as it is complete. And he, exactly as he is enough. The breathing slows further, deeper. The spaces between each breath lengthening. The body finding its rhythm for sleep. That particular cadence that signals to every system that maintenance mode is acceptable, that vigilance can decrease, that consciousness can release its grip without consequence, and slowly, gradually, naturally, it does. Thought becoming fragmentary, awareness becoming sporadic. The continuous stream of self-observation breaking into pools and eddies, moments of clarity separated by expanding gaps of nothing in particular. The submarine holds him through all of this, unchanging guardian. Patient container, the steady hole between him and the ocean's immensity. The reliable systems maintaining air and temperature and all the subtle parameters that allow mammalian life to persist in a place designed only for creatures, adapted to crushing pressure and perpetual darkness. But he is here, breathing here, resting here, held by engineering and physics and the simple fact of walls that refuse to fail. His presence changes nothing about the ocean's depth. His rest does not alter the pressure or the darkness or the patient sediment beneath. Yet he is here, and here he is safe, and safe he can release, can stop holding everything so tightly, can let the day dissolve, can allow the accumulated weight of performance and pretense and constant negotiation to settle like disturbed sediment, falling through clear water until it reaches bottom and lies still. The amber light glows on, the hum continues, the pressure remains. And Thomas, breathing slowly in the space between all of these constancies, finally allows himself to drift into the deeper darkness that waits behind his closed eyes. Not sleep, not yet, but its closest neighbor. The liminal country where the body still breathes, but the mind releases its demand for interpretation, where sensation exists without story, where the present moment expands to fill all available space, leaving no room for past regrets or future anxieties. Just this, just now. Just the submarine and the ocean and the man held between them, all existing in equilibrium that requires nothing except their continued presence. And here, in this depth, in this silence, in this amberlit pocket of air impossibly far from the surface world, he finally stops trying to be anything other than exactly what he is, which is enough. Has always been enough, will remain enough, long after this night passes and morning returns and the surface world makes its demands again. But that is later. That is elsewhere. Here, now, there is only this. Only the breathing, only the hum, only the gentle, constant pressure of water held at bay by walls that will not yield. And in that holding, in that steadiness, in that profound and textured silence, Thomas finally rests, not as achievement, not as surrender, simply as the natural consequence of being held by something stronger than his need to hold himself. The submarine knows how to do this. It was built for exactly this, and so it does, quietly, steadily, without fanfare or announcement. It simply continues, as does the ocean, as does the amber light, as does the breathing, as does the night, all of it continuing, all of it holding, all of it enough.